Hi, and welcome back. Episode 5 of Data Mesh TV. Today, I will be joined by Ronald Bon, president of DAMA Netherlands. Now, before we get into the conversation, let's kind of set the context for what we hope to discuss today. What's in it for you from the audience perspective? We're all on our data mesh journey. Some of us are just getting started, some of us are all the way in, and we're appreciate, or at least hopefully we all appreciate that data governance is a big part of what we're trying to achieve. We want better data governance with a data mesh. How do we do that? Are we reinventing data governance? Are we trying to fit data mesh into what is already there? Maybe. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I think the best place to get started, if you're thinking about how to integrate your data governance processes with your data mesh, is to go back to a standard. Let's go back to basics. DAMA sets forth a fantastic data management standard, a data management book of knowledge if you're a CDO or somebody on the data side who's certified. It sets a set of standards and models that we can all leverage for thinking about how to implement key activities and processes and policies and how to establish strategy in our company. So there's a lot there for us to leverage. How do we leverage that for data mesh? That's the conversation today. I hope you'll enjoy it. Welcome to the show, Ronald.
Hi, Adrian. Glad to be here. And I'm very excited to talk to you about this and also see what kind of conclusions we can come to.
Awesome. I think your screen froze there a second. So there you go. You're back. Awesome. Fantastic. Hey, you're a man of mystery, Ronald. I like to start the show with something funny. And hopefully your video catches up. We'll see how that works in a second.
Yeah,
We
there's something going on here.
That's okay. We can hear you fine, which is good. So if you talk, the video will catch up later, I think. But what I was going to say was I couldn't find anything on you. Yeah, you're like a man of mystery. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but I'm the president of DAMA. I will find you. And so it's something like that, right? So welcome, Ronald. I know you've done a lot of research on data mesh, and I appreciate that. In our kind of pre-conversations, I sat back and I said, man, Ronald knows everything about data mesh and he knows everything about DAMA. So I'm going to be really quiet in today's show, and I'm going to do my best, and hopefully for the audience as well, to absorb your knowledge. So let's jump in. Why don't we start, Ronald, with just an overview of DAMA?
Yeah, I think that's good to do because a lot of people have heard of Dharma, but not everybody. But when I joined Dharma last year, I was just amazed by the whole history. Um, it's they started in the 1980s in California just because they saw that managing data is a tough thing, and everybody seemed to be reinventing the wheel, so to speak. So what they did very early on, they formed chapters and got together and shared experiences. And now they have also bundled then that in the DMBOK, the data management body of knowledge, which is used a lot. And it contains so much information, and it's just amazing. And if you see the history, and also if you see how we're trying to catch up with the rate of technology, which is going so fast, that's when I bumped into data mesh, and I thought, Dama DMBOK and the data mesh, they're not mutually exclusive. They can really work together.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's exciting. I think, first of all, I think almost everyone I talk to about data mesh, Ronald, I think they appreciate data governance, which is fantastic, right? So there aren't many out there that think that they're different, that you can do one without the other, right? When they get started, so to speak, with the technology elements of data mesh, I think the nice thing is because the data mesh is a decentralized approach, leveraging the resources you already have in place, you move really fast, and it's exciting because with the speed, so to speak, you're able to kind of get some quick wins. Now, once you start moving really fast with technology and you start to kind of get some of those early wins, so to speak, with the data mesh program, and as you start to grow and you start to kind of add more users or start to add more data products, you're going to get to a point where you really need to rethink governance. Now, if you do that sooner, better. But some organizations wait, if you will, till there's the need to do it. When they're at that point and they're ready to kind of get started, and I'm buying some time, hopefully, Ronald, can you still hear me, Ronald? Oh, maybe we lost Ronald. Maybe I'll just keep talking. Maybe he's resetting his camera. So I'll talk to the audience while Ronald is kind of getting reset. What's interesting about, or let me say, what's valuable about these standards and the way that you should think about applying them first and foremost is if we just start with the basics. There's a DMBOK wheel that DAMA offers, and there's a number like 13 or so different elements that are covered in that wheel. And I'm stealing your thunder, Ronald. I was kind of stealing your.
Yes, sorry, I've got no idea what happened, but
No, you know what? But you're back and you're live and you're sharp, right? But maybe you take it from there, right? Tell us about, because I really think there's as you hinted a second ago, there's a marriage between the data management book of knowledge, so to speak, or the wheel, the data governance wheel, and what we're doing in the data mesh. And you have a really good analogy that I think paints a picture. Let's jump right into that.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, maybe one step back, because we were speaking to some people from the Dutch local government, and they said, we're doing all of these things, like building information management, and we're doing smart cities, we're doing digital twins, and all kinds of fancy stuff. And they said, we can't get it together. There are always things missing or not in place. And he said, suddenly dawned to us, if we use a more productized approach like the data mesh, maybe it can all come together. So now in the Netherlands, we're starting up a data mesh working group to really dive deep into the data mesh and how it works for the DEMA how do you call it, the knowledge areas. Yeah. So that is very exciting, and so I'm really closely involved with them, but also a lot of other companies besides the local government are interested and are working together with us. And yeah, and then if you talk about, okay, so what is data mesh and how does it work together with DAMA? Like I use the analogy, like suppose you have a supermarket, and in the supermarket you've got all kinds of products, and you want to use those products. Maybe you want to make cookies, or maybe you want to make a meal. So you need these products, and what do you use to sort of say, okay, I want this product, but not that product. Yeah. And basically it comes down to, if you really flatten what data management is the label on the package. And that really is showing you, okay, this is what you can use it for. This is the supplier. This is the quality. I mean, if you really translate it, it's all about data lineage, data quality.
Well, let me pause you there, because I mean, let me because I think this is a great way to describe it. So let me paint that picture, right? So you go to the grocery store, you pick up an item from the store. There's an expectation that you have as a consumer of a certain level of quality because you're getting at a store and it's gone through some process. So in the data world, those are governance processes. In a grocery store, those are some supply chain processes. But when I love the idea of picking up a product off a shelf, as I would expect a consumer to pick a data product out of a catalog and then to see what it is. Well, what is it? What ingredients are? And you might even say where it was made, right? Made in Azure or whatever, right?
Yeah. So all the important things that you need to know, which in data management we call data quality, data lineage, data profiling, but also who's the owner, where does it come from, things like that. Those are all really important things. I mean, supermarkets are not silly. I mean, they're doing this for a reason, that there is a need for this. So if you flatten data management to just the label, then I think, okay, well, we should make it a little bit more interesting. And indeed, data governance and all the processes around it are also part of it. And that's why I like data mesh so much, because they factor that in. So you can be a data product owner, but you've got some responsibilities. And one of the things is, for example, there is a customer, he's using your data and he's not happy. So he wants to contact you and he says, the quality of this thing is really not good, or I want to have more of this ingredient or more of that ingredient. So in that analogy, it really works out. And also when you build data products based on other data products, it's almost having a deli in the supermarket. Like, they do the flour and the butter and the yeast, but they also make croissants for you if you want. Right. And they can also make you a pizza or whatever you want.
The sections of a grocery store are like domains, right? You've got the fruits and vegetable domain, you've got on the bakery domain, and if you're in the Netherlands, hopefully somewhere there's the stroop waffle domain, or
Yes.
but
Yeah.
let me put that back, because to put it in a context, right? So that grocery store didn't just pop up on its own, right? There is an architecture. There's certain mechanics involved to, one, getting products from their source, whether it's in the field or whether
Yeah.
it's something's making. You take so data or products from their source, you
Yeah.
bring them forward, you put them into something, you mix them up together somehow, and you end up with something that's valuable to the consumer. There's an architecture, if you will, an end-to-end architecture for a supermarket. You might call it supply chain, that
Yeah.
brings it all together. Just like there's an architecture in a data mesh that brings it all together. The data mesh architecture, I think it's similar to, I like the idea, because to a grocery store, where we're not going to say everybody has to farm in the Netherlands. Nah, we'll bring groceries, or we'll bring fruits and vegetables from wherever, so to speak, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
you guys do have the best, the best tulips for sure,
Yes,
and
exactly.
probably the best asparagus. But it's a decentralized supply chain. We're working in data in a decentralized supply chain, bringing many things together. And so there's data architecture, which one of those elements in the wheel is really, really important. The activities, the policies, the strategy for data architecture doesn't change.
Yeah.
How you apply it for a data mesh is different, but I think the DAMA standards still hold true.
Yeah, absolutely true. And especially when you talk about the supply chain, then you're also talking a lot about IT. And what I love about the data mesh is that IT and the business have their own place. It's not that IT is going to say anything about the contents of your data products. No, they know very little about that, but they do know all about data processing, storage of data, and everything else. So in the data mesh, you can really work together. And the nice thing is that when you look at Dama DMBOK, that all the aspects that you need, because in the DMBOK we see a lot of flow diagrams, your input and your output, but also the different roles. They can really apply one-on-one to what you want to do in your data mesh.
Yep.
So that's why I'm so excited about this, because the business and IT can work together in a better way, and still we're using data management, how we basically have done it, and all the experience we've had over the past 40 years. So that's amazing.
Let me add a nugget for the audience. Can I? Is nugget something that translates globally? I don't know. I hope maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't.
I
It's a
guess.
piece of information. Yeah, something
Yeah.
that I kind of, I don't want to say stole. I reference from DAMA is, I like the way in the data architecture section that we talk about value chains, and so I bring those concepts directly into, when I talk about a value chain within a data mesh. I steal the same ideas that DAMA talks about. But let me take it to another topic, right? Let's talk about stewardship and ownership, because I think that's another thing that's obviously really, really important in any data governance model, and it's critically important in a data mesh. The way we think about stewards, though, we're now thinking about creating data stewardship within domains, and with giving these data stewards a certain level of autonomy. So what's your view on that element, on the ownership element, the stewardship element?
Well, a lot of companies are struggling. They sort of say, okay, well, I've got a data steward basically for certain processes, and then looking then at departments and things like that.
Yeah.
They try to make it domain-based, but they're struggling with the domain, because what is a domain? And that's quite difficult. So you see, okay, then they've got like data stewards that are more local, and the domain data stewards and the corporate data stewards. Yeah, it's a little bit messy. With data mesh, you can organize it much more naturally, and then the data stewards can also follow that organization. And I know with data mesh, it's all domain, which is, I think, a very good way to do. Yeah, so I think you're right. Data stewardship might also really benefit from a different approach, like the data mesh.
It's a really good point, though, actually. I didn't think about it till just now. I'm glad you brought it up. We have been talking about data stewards for a long time. Obviously, the DMBOK's been around for a bit, and we have thought about domains from a data management perspective. I remember I had a PowerPoint slide. I have it pictured in my head really well, and I had domains, and I had data owners and data value owners and all kinds of stuff. But those domains didn't mean anything to anybody except for us internally, right? We never went to a business team and said, here are your domains, or at least not, they weren't domains they recognized. They were domains that we used in the CDO world or the architecture world to describe who was accountable.
Yeah.
Fast forward to data mesh, domains are real now, right? They're real constructs. It's like, okay, so is a domain just a thing on a PowerPoint site? No, a domain is something real. That you go knock on that door, that's your domain. When you walk through that door, all the data you would expect to find in your finance domain is there and it's available to you. And guess what? There's a data steward who is responsible for that domain, who can kind of help guide you through what kind of data it is, guide you through the data products, and then maybe even help you figure out what products you might need. That's a distinct advantage, I think. It's interesting.
Yeah, but I think if you also look at how they look at domains, then basically they say, well, we've got a separation. We've got the supply, and they say, okay, there we see certain domains, for example, finance, HR, and so on. But at the consumer side, we also have domains, and they're different domains. And that's really interesting, because then you see, okay, it's not either or, but you can have both. And that makes it very powerful, because that means you don't have to have only one option, only one way of dividing your domains, but you can have multiple based on supply and based on demand. It's well, to me, it's very natural, but yeah, in data management world, it's far more always driven from the supply side.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I got me thinking here now. There's a whole other show on that we could do.
Yeah, for sure.
There's something else. I have a list of things that I was like, we're going to get to this. We're going to get to this. So I want to talk a little bit about data quality and metadata. So I remember early on in my DAMA training, one of the things I remember was, we always start with metadata. Like, so it's like, it's a big wheel, and you're like, okay, it's a wheel. If it was flat in sequence, you could say, do this, then do this, and do this. The wheel implies you got to do everything, right? Everything has to work together for data governance to be effective. I get it. Yeah. Well, where do I start? And so
yeah, exactly.
Metadata was one that we always said, let's start there, because you almost can't do anything else unless you understand what you're working with. You have to understand the data you have in front of you before you can start to do quality or stewardship or anything else. I like what we're doing within a data mesh for metadata. And the metadata that we're focused really on providing really good metadata at the product level, data product level, and then enabling the domain owner, that steward, with really good metadata for what they're using on the back end. Here's what I think, and let's see, and I might be wrong here, so I need an expert to tell me whether I'm thinking about this the right way. But the struggle I had with metadata in my past was that it was bad in so many places. I didn't know where to start. So I looked at all the sources, and I was trying to fix metadata on the back end. That was really difficult. It's just too much. I know there's now really nice AI tools and so forth that can go in there and help you fill in reference data. They use standard reference models. They'll automatically go in there and fill in some stuff and fix some stuff and tell you what's broken. But that only goes so far, right? Maybe that takes you from 0 to 15%. You got the rest to fix. So bull in the ocean, so to speak, bottom up approach on metadata. I never felt like I was going to get anywhere. If I flip it and I start focusing from in my old world, right to left was business on the right, data, raw data on the far left. If I focus right to left, so to speak, I can start focusing on metadata and quality where it matters. This is the data they want. Metadata is bad. Let's fix it. This is the data they want. Quality is bad. Let's fix it. So I can still apply the exact same DAMA principles, but instead of bull in the ocean on the back end, I'm focusing those in the areas that matter most and working backwards. And so,
exactly.
What do you think?
I agree with it. I think if you can make data management more demand driven, like,
there you go.
How good does it need to be? Because you can think, for example, I'm going to train a machine learning model, and I've got some data sets, and of course I register them so that they know, okay, they're my data sets and they come from here and so on, and you can check them in 2 months' time. So I just use a little bit of metadata to just describe them. But for example, if I have financial data that is also used for group reporting, for example, that, for sure, I want to use a lot of metadata to exactly describe what the data set is. So we should really step away from, one size fits all data management to really like, okay, this is good enough. We don't have to do more, because also everything you do, all the metadata you assign, you need to maintain it. It costs money.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's be very aware of it. Now, if you apply that to the data mesh, and for example, say, okay, I've got a data product, but it's not a finished product, but it can be a good basis for other products. Then you say, okay, well, I put down some metadata to it and so some other things, just enough so that other people can use the product to do their things with. But the final product, which is for data consumers, yeah, maybe you should put much more emphasis on correct metadata there. So yeah, if we differentiate, we spend less time, and then even large data sets become much more manageable.
Yeah, I like where the conversation went. I know even with the camera glitch at the beginning, all of a sudden I was like, we got into a good groove here, and I'm like, oh, this is sharp. So we've covered a couple of different things, and I want to kind of lay out for the audience just a couple of like key takeaways, right? And we've got some time still, so we don't have to rush through these. Lay out some practical things that they can start thinking about. Almost try to put what we've been discussing together, so to speak. So work with me here. So on the top, I think what we're saying is, as you're implementing your data mesh, and you start to, the natural questions teams are having today, the companies that I'm talking to, like, oh, hold on a second, what should that person be doing, right? So when I start to build the architecture, what should my data engineer be doing, or what should my data architect be doing, or what should these people be doing in a data mesh? My standard response is, let's take a look at what they're already doing, and let's figure out how that fits in the mesh. A better answer might be, let's go back to DAMA, right? In DAMA, if you go to the data architecture chapter, there are sets of activities and outcomes that we need to do in data architecture. I would start with that. Let's start
exactly.
Make sure that we haven't missed something.
Yeah, that's the nice thing as well. When you talk about the knowledge area of data modeling or BI even and all the others, basically the process is still the same. And in data mesh, the scope can be different, and maybe how business and IT work together can be different. For example, if you talk about data architecture, that is typically not something the business would be doing, but IT would be doing for the business. But basically, you can take the book and really like productize it with the data mesh.
Well, I'll give you another one. I mean, let's look at the other one that we talk about a lot is, how do we manage, and for working on some models now, a digital operating model, how do we manage a domain, and how do we manage data products? Like, what are the activities you need to put in place to operate a domain and to operate data products? Again, it's like, hey, let's take a look at what you're doing now, and let's see how it works. Even better, let's go look at DAMA, and let's figure out what the DAMA says, because in DAMA there's chapters dedicated to metadata management, data governance, data quality.
Exactly.
All these activities are covered. There's a night table. Let's look at the activities. I just think it's a nice opportunity for us to, I'm not going to say reset, that's not the purpose, but just make sure that we're doing everything correctly. Am I doing this right? Hey, there's an opportunity for me to do it better. It doesn't mean that we do it manually, because I think, and that's where I'm excited about DAMA. Maybe you can talk in a second about the data mesh work you guys are doing. But as DAMA starts to kind of get closer to data mesh and we start to bring the two together, I think there's some things, I hope DAMA would agree, that we do in the data mesh that are going to make governance easier for governance practitioners. I can do quality better. I can do architecture better. I can do metadata better. And so maybe there's a view of the DAMA DMBOK with data mesh or something. I don't know. But I'm excited about bringing the two together. So is that okay? Something for you to talk about, this data mesh work you guys are doing?
But I think I want to take one step back, because what I see is that the DMBOK is used worldwide in almost any industry, in government, in oil and gas, in finance. And it's amazing that one book with all of these things in there can be applied in so many environments. And I think that's credit to the authors and who have done this, because I know they spend a lot of time, making sure it can be applied anywhere, and it's not specific to any kind of industry. So that's good. And then when you see data mesh, and when you see, okay, well, with all this data in my analytics plane, and not just the operational plane, but also the analytics plane. How am I going to manage that? And then you see, well, yeah, basically, I can take the book and look at the processes, look at the stakeholders, and look at the outcomes that are necessary. And yeah, basically, you can do that.
It's laid out very well, indeed.
Yeah, and what the nice thing as well is that data mesh makes sure that your product is not a huge thing. I see a lot of companies, they say, okay, well, we need some kind of reporting. So we go from the source system, we go to the data lake, we do all kinds of data transitions, and then we put it in a data warehouse, and then we do our BI reporting on it. And they want to do that in one team. And then it's almost, programmed to fail, I must say. But now with the data mesh, you say, you know what? We're making a data product. We're taking it out of the source system and putting it on the data lake. And here's the product. And anybody who wants to do something with it, that's great. And in that small environment, you can put all the data management features that you need. So you take the Dama DMBOK and just say, okay, this is what we need to do there. So yeah, it's great to see these possible applications as well. Now the working group that we're starting is also really amazing that we have people from the business doing this. So it's hardly any IT people there, and they just taking the book and they're saying, okay,
Principle number one of a data mesh is that it's business focused, sharp.
Exactly. Yeah. So so I'm also very excited about that.
You and I talked about this before, and I just realized a great point to bring up as well in the conversation. I had someone else I was talking to that said, hey, the Dama and the DMBOK was really kind of designed for a centralized approach, and the governance processes are really designed for kind of a central data governance team doing everything for everybody, and it may not apply to a distributed model. I don't think that's true, by the way. In fact, there's an image that I stole from the data. I told you this.
Exactly.
It's a scale. It talks about centralized versus federated, and there's a whole 4 or 5 pages. Maybe that's too many. I don't know, but there's a few pages that talk about the level of federation you do. And so even in 1985, who knows when that was created, there was already the concept of federation. And in the data mesh, we probably push a little bit closer to the federation model to say, you're going to do these data governance principles, and domain teams, we're going to give you some autonomy to manage the data governance principles on your own. And there's a balance. There's no answer. I don't think we're going to have the answer on the call today. Maybe your data mesh group can come up with a better response. But there's a balance between which data governance principles we're going to maintain centrally, because we have to make sure they're fully controlled, and the data governance principles that we're going to federate to the domains and say, you can manage these levers on your own based on your risk versus value profile, but these here are non-negotiable. And that's the next level, I think, a conversation that people are looking for is, how do I do that well?
Yeah, but also it's not set in stone. So for example, if you just start and you say, okay, we've got a central team with a lot of data management experience, so they're going to find out how we're going to do it. And decentralized, there will be the product teams, and more and more you give them space to do their own thing. So you go from a very centralized to a more federated system over time. So yeah, we should think that with anything, it's not set in stone. It's not like, okay, we've done it now, that's it. No, it's you move with the company, with the strategy, you move with all the waves that we're going through. Well, like today as well, things happen, and then suddenly your whole company is like, oh my God, we have to do something. So adapt and be flexible.
No, that's a great point, because just like we say to people, the data mesh is a journey. And I talked to companies that started small, and what they built small and fast is delivering great value. And there's no immediate sense for them to grow into. They're like, we got this done. It's delivering value. We're going to let it cook for a while, so to speak. And that's great. Other organizations are trying to blow up their data mesh, which is fantastic. We're going to grow it faster. We're going to grow across the enterprise. Awesome. That there's, again, different value profiles there. But it's a journey, right? You don't get there overnight. And you start small, you learn, like Pathfinders, you learn, you iterate, you refine, and you grow. We do the same thing in data governance, right? We don't go out there and say, let's splash it to the company. We're like, no, hold on a second.
No.
We grow, we train.
Yeah.
Literacy. We didn't even talk about literacy today, but literacy is such a key element of everything we've been talking about. You just can't roll governance out without training people why it's important, what their roles are, and what the consequences are, so to speak. Maybe that's another show we can do, Ronald. But I think there's a lot there for us to continue to share between the data mesh community and the DAMA community.
Yeah, the experience that I heard of from companies in Europe, like Zalando, for example, they were one of the first adopters from data mesh. Was really like, you know, it's a journey, and they also over time they changed their insights, and they thought, okay, well, maybe, you know, we should be more leaning towards this or that. So yeah. The nice thing is it's all business driven. So, you know, the business has a bottom line and they need to fulfill that. So yeah, let's see how data management and all the technology that we have can enable them to do that.
Yeah, that's so many good points. We may have to do another one, Ronald. And as we get further down on the merging of the two ideas of the two great concepts, I think
I'll make sure that my laptop then behaves.
Hey, no, hey, I missed the fancy background, but you're an international man of mysteries, so I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining the show, Ronald.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Adrian. And maybe next one.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that was a great show. It's always interesting when you're talking to an expert about something they're passionate about. It's even better when you're talking to an expert and they end up being an expert on your topic as well. Ronald knew so much about data mesh. You can tell he did his homework. Something he said there towards the end that I wanted to just underscore, because I think it's relevant to data mesh as well. He talked about DAMA and the DMBOK as being something that's relevant to all industries and all organizations. It's certainly not a one size fits all, right? Companies can take the DAMA, the DMBOK, and they can apply it in a way that makes the most sense for them. They apply it in the way that creates value for their organization. I would like for us to think about data mesh the same way, right? It's not a one size fits all. There's small data meshes, there's big data meshes. There's data meshes that are gone all the way with self-serve, and there's data meshes that don't have any self-service yet. I think there's a vision for what the data mesh can be over a longer period, but then there's the reality of what the data mesh means to your company today. And really what that is it's creating value for me today. And whatever that looks like, that's your data mesh. So fantastic insight from our friend Ronald. Just to kind of summarize some of the key points, I think first and foremost, hopefully you got an appreciation that there is a lot for you to leverage in the DAMA standards and the DAMA guidelines. Please go there. If you're thinking about what should I do here, what should I do there, there's a book. There's a lot of great guidance there. It's proven, it's tested. Your CDO organization, I'm sure, is very well versed in DAMA. And so there are people within your company that you can reference or reach out to us and we can have that conversation. When we talk about those data governance processes, I mean, the reason why we're bringing DAMA into the conversation is because you can't succeed with your data mesh without some data governance. It doesn't mean that you have to get it all right at the beginning. You can get started with your data mesh and get going and create value, so to speak. But when you really start to grow that data mesh, you're going to start to appreciate that the only way that you're really going to fully exploit that value is to have very strong foundational processes. So it's important for your data mesh. And that's why we had the conversation today. If you want to walk away with some key examples, so some key thoughts of areas that you can start to think about, one of them is the architecture. When we start thinking about how we manage a data mesh architecture, I would advise go take a look at what's in the book. There are some activities, some key principles, strategies, and outcomes that I think are still very relevant, right? They were written before the data mesh, but as I mentioned earlier, there's some ideas in there that you might be surprised were already very data mesh-like. And so we can reference that. On the integration side, metadata is something we talked about quite a bit today. If you can curate strong metadata and build strong, valuable, reusable data products, it makes integration so much easier. It makes democratization so much easier. You have autonomous domain owners, data stewards, who have access to the right data to create the right data products with the right metadata. You've got a powerful set, so to speak, a powerful domain that can work and create value for your business. And the last piece there is in data quality, right? In that same story, if you're focused on data products and you're focused on data quality in the right areas, you can start to create value faster because you're putting the effort where it matters the most. we're just scratching the surface in the relationship with Dama and the integration with Data Mesh. I look forward to future conversations with Ronald. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.